Let's dive in. Got a good group coming in. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It's a privilege again to speak with my good friend Marie, former congresswoman from Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. Ran a brilliant campaign, took out a corporate Democrat, which we need fewer corporate Democrats in Congress, and has been an unapologetic voice for the entire country, for working class folks across the political spectrum. I know Marie's often described as a voice for progressive values, but I think that limits her. I think if you look at her campaign, if you look at her work, she's been an unapologetic voice for people, regardless of political background, especially in the working class. And I think that's what makes her so special. We co-wrote a piece today, and we want to talk about that and take your questions as well. A bunch of you folks put your questions into the articles that we respectively published. The title is America, We Need to Talk. New movement, third party, or both, exploring a sensitive question that too many seem too afraid to ask. And Marie, I want to give credit where credit is due. It was your idea that we should write this. And I said, yeah, definitely. What ignited the idea to write this in the first place?
Oftentimes we think that our government is almost like an old organism that doesn't change much, right? But government changes all the time. Society changes, traditions change, composition of societies change. So of course our government would change, right? And what I was seeing everywhere is the dissatisfaction with our Democratic Party leaders. And part of that is what we've talked about, right? Is
Yeah,
that activists have always led throughout all of time and
right.
throughout every country. So this is no different. So now our activist leaders have to decide, do we want to help our Democratic leaders reform the party, create a movement within the party, or should there be a third party? And it's really a chewy question, right? Because third parties are not easy, or they're not for the faint of heart. Are movements much less work? Maybe, maybe not. And how do we reform if we go down? So those are all the things that were swirling around my head, mostly because my amazing subscribers were asking the same question. So I really started to think about, is it time, that we have that hard discussion?
I think it's absolutely time. And look, this is not just based off of licking our finger and putting it up and seeing which way the winds are blowing. We're seeing the hard data. Quinnipiac University put out a poll, and it's been substantiated by several other polls as well, that shows that Democrats have a historic low, a 21% approval rating, a historic low. Republicans are at a record high of 40%, and Donald Trump is even higher at 45%. And so for those saying that, no, we got to stay in the Democratic Party, my question to those folks is, okay, it's an established party. I get it. How do you explain that in the face of an actual fascist who is endorsing Nazi salutes, sexual assault against women, convicted, 37 times, I've lost count, of felony bank fraud, and the list goes on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Facing that, you're at 21%. It would be one thing if Republicans had like this genius moral icon who is just God's gift to politics. But we're talking about like the worst of the worst, and you have a 21% approval rating. If this was any other industry, any other world, Marie,
Yeah.
and your top performer had a 21% success rate when his opposition is double his success rate, you would think about, hey, maybe I need to get a new top performer. So in the comments, those who believe that's the thing, I want to hear it. But the second part of it, and this is where I think the point you brought up is really important. I think this is the part that you wrote, that members of Congress are terrified to take risks. Even as the opposition party, too many Democrats rely on corporate donors like PAC and APACs, donors and PACs like APAC, who dictate their positions instead of fighting for both solutions. The result, a party too scared to lead, too compromised to be effective, and too weak to counteract fascism. That kind of describes what we're seeing right now with the Democratic Party.
It is. We all know that when you operate from fear, whether you're operating from fear within your family, your community, your business, your political organization, whatever it is, operating from fear is never a good thing.
Yes.
Um, And so when you operate from fear and paralysis sets in no matter
Yeah.
what, right? Like you just become stunned and a deer in headlights. And they've had a lot of time to work through that fear. I mean, it's been 4 months now. And so my issue is that I would have been preparing way back in the hinterlands a year ago. Look, I've got this 900-page tome called Project 2025 to get ready for, God forbid, our great candidate doesn't win.
Yeah.
And she was a great candidate. So at the end of the day, um, the party just wasn't prepared for this. And then secondly, they're operating from fear. What we have to do as activists is lead and help them understand you have public sentiment behind you, and that's
Yeah.
when politicians are most effective. You now know you have the sentiment. We're going to keep on doing all the things, the calling, the protesting, letting folks know how we feel, and all of those good things. Right? We're going to keep doing that. So now you have to get rid of your fear and walk through that firewall and
That's right.
decide how you're going to lead, right? And so that's what we're asking right now. And if you can't do that, ask for our help. That's fine. But the first thing they have to do is to say, hey, we do need to go ask people what they want. The number one thing that I saw on the doors when I was knocking for Kamala was Trump voters would say, well, nobody ever asked me. And, the Democratic Party is always telling me how I feel. And that's very
Right.
frustrating. I will
Right.
tell you, when I was campaigning, it was the first thing I would do is say, "Hey, what's bothering you? What is your issue?
Yeah.
What is your problem?" And
Yep.
I don't think we've done that. We haven't knocked on doors in all 50 states and done soft soundings and focus groups. And that's my assignment. And I do think Ken Martin, the new head of the GNC, is actually doing that. So that's the hopeful spot here.
The some of the questions, very well said, Marie. Very well said, and I'm hopeful to see more. I will say it seems like he's hiring a lot of the same consultants as in the past, which is a
Yeah.
problem if you ask me. Somebody brought up the point that we risk splitting the party and we risk handing over every election to Republicans going forward.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that objection, that concern?
I think that's valid. I think that what we have to do is demand different behaviors and different operating strategies. And the way we do that is keep doing all of the strong activism we're doing, but be clear with our leaders that, like, look, hey, we are here for you, but we demand that you act as an opposition party, not a resistance party. Like, right, this is work outside the box, break the rules, and stop with, oh my gosh, decorum, decorum, decorum. Because guess what? Decorum doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And you're going to lose your country if you keep on worrying about Emily Post's etiquette book and do you have your finger up when you're drinking a teacup? Like,
Yep.
stop it.
I mean, and I think that's part of my frustration with the party leadership right now. We're seeing some grotesque examples of fascism and just autocratic behavior.
Mhm.
Mahmoud Khalil is in the news right now, green card holder, no criminal record, no charges, no warrant, nothing.
Pregnant wife. Yeah.
Pregnant wife, 8 months pregnant, U.S. citizen. He's abducted and disappeared in the dark of night and moved all the way to Louisiana, not told, his family's not told where he is.
Yeah.
And if you read the responses from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, they both start by scolding him for being an anti Semite and say, and even though he's an anti Semite, we shouldn't be doing this because it's bad. And I'm just like, this is the Mike Brown, he's no angel all over again. This is the, she was assaulted, but what was she wearing all over again? It's like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be a perfect human being to have constitutional protections, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, the precedent that's being set here is I'm not even going to get into that he's not an anti-Semite, because, there were Jewish people who've already spoken on his behalf far more
Right.
eloquently than
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not even going to get into that argument. That's,
Yeah.
to me, such a trivial
And it's very
distraction.
old and tired. It's silly.
It is.
He's
It
not.
is. And
He wanted peace.
I will just say it's disgusting to me that they're ignoring the countless Jewish voices that have come up and said, no, he's not anti-Semitic. He's explicitly clear that the survival of Jewish people and Palestinians must happen together. That's his
Right.
whole point. And if
Right.
you're not going to listen to Jewish people when they're telling you that, then I'm not going to sit here and try to convince
Yeah.
you otherwise. They've said it eloquently, and I believe them, and let's move on. But the broader point of the lack of fight that we're seeing right now is, and the judge is going to rule today after the hearing, but if it's established that Donald Trump can just abduct and disappear people because he doesn't like their free speech,
Right.
that changes the whole narrative of due process in this country. Nobody is safe at that point.
Yeah.
And I need Democratic leadership to be more powerful and more assertive than, well, you know, he's an anti-Semite, but I guess we shouldn't do it to anti-Semites either. Like, what are you trying to accomplish at this point? And what needs to happen for you to understand that if Trump gets away with this, democracy, our republic is done. We are
Right.
Putin's Russia at that point.
Right. And let me just make a point because it's absolutely apropos at this moment is we're seeing inactivity by our Democratic leaders when we do see them speak out. Now, not all of them. I want to be clear. There is a handful, Jasmine Crockett,
Yeah.
AOC, Ro Khanna, Bernie
Delia
Sanders,
Ramirez. Yeah.
Chris, Delia Ramirez, Chris Murphy in the Senate. They are speaking out. They're being forceful. They're acting like an opposition party. The reason Jeffries and Schumer are not acting like the opposition party and taking leadership is because I'm just going to be clear with everyone, and I'm sorry if I offend everybody, but they are controlled by corporate PACs and APAC. They just are.
Yeah.
And so they are afraid to make a move because if they piss off those two entities and where their money comes from, oh my gosh, what will happen? When in reality, they should stop worrying about that money all the time and start worrying about what's right for the country
Right.
and
That's
have
right.
that fight another day about the money.
Lockheed Martin funds Jeffries pretty heavily. Every corporate PAC you can imagine. I was chuckling to myself when they put out an ad during the 2024 presidential campaign about how billionaires support Trump, and then somebody countered by pointing out that more billionaires are donating to Harris. And it's like, you guys, if you don't see the hypocrisy in that
Yeah.
picture, then what do we have to tell you? Now, was Harris a better candidate than Trump? Undoubtedly. There's like no comparison, right? It's like comparing a candle to the sun. Like you
Yeah.
can't compare the two. She was a far better candidate. But, and this is the point that Democrats on the establishment side don't seem to understand, you can't just say, I'm not Trump and expect to get the vote. That's just not
Right.
how it works. It's
Right.
never worked. And somebody
Right.
made this comment here as well that I'm tired of Democrats beating me over the head, that if you don't vote for me, the other guy's far worse. Give me a vision to vote for. Give me something. And by the way, I'm saying this to Marie Newman, who led by example, who said you don't have to just vote for the guy who's not a Republican. You can vote for somebody, and that's how you took out a corporate Democrat. I'd love for you to kind of share that vision and that story
Yeah.
for those who don't know the journey you went on, and everything you're saying now is not theory. It's not hyperbole. You
No.
practiced this.
With
You
that.
you
Yeah.
executed this. You accomplished this.
Yeah. In the Wayback Machine in 2018, I ran against an opponent that was anti-immigrant, anti-women's health care, anti the ACA, on and on, long list, right? That's why I ran against him. Um, and because it was a corporate Democrat, I started bringing it up then that we don't need to be holden to corporations. It's silly. You can run a good ground game. You can raise small dollar. You can do all that stuff. We did. We got real close in 2018. We lost by 2 points, came back in 2020 and won.
Yep.
But then the fight was not over about corporate Democrats, right? Is that
Yep.
corporate Democrats still are alive and well, and probably more well than ever in Congress. And so 89% of Congress, when you combine the entire body, 89% of Congress takes corporate PAC money.
Yeah.
And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and sometimes millions of dollars per member of the
Yep.
House and Senate, right?
Yep.
So this is how severe this is. And they all are controlled by it. They'll say, oh, well, I don't vote based on who I take money from. Well, that's a bunch of horse hockey. And we all
Yeah.
know, right? So
Yep.
let's just not even accept that as an answer. But back to the point of I ran those races. I wasn't afraid to lose my job. These
Yeah.
folks are so afraid to lose that money and lose their job. I told my staff every week, it's like, we should do the right, honest, transparent, authentic thing no matter what.
That's
And if
right.
we lose our jobs, we lose our jobs, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'd rather look in the mirror knowing I gave all I had for what I believe in than wake up knowing I'm there as a tool or fraud for somebody else. And unfortunately, that's what is the case for so many of these members of Congress right now. I ran against a corporate Democrat. I did not win. And, if I were to describe my opponent's record to most people, and not tell them their party affiliation. If I told you that there's a politician, for those listening, if I told you there's a politician who voted 3 times to repeal the ACA, including repealing the protection for people with pre-existing conditions, he voted to repeal significant parts of the Americans with Disabilities Act to make it more difficult for people with disabilities to sue when they're discriminated against. If he voted to deregulate banks right before the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, if he took Exxon money, if he took money from United Health while they were denying senior citizens critical life-saving care, you would say, well, that's obviously a Republican. But no, this is a Democrat in a deep blue district. And that's fundamentally, his name is Bill Foster. I'm not going to hide him.
Yeah.
His name is Bill Foster. He's a multi-millionaire. He made his money through non-union manufacturing by getting tax incentives that took tax money away from schools. And this is supposed to be the champion that's going to stand up against fascism. And by the way, to quote Ta-Nehisi Coates, he was asked, "Are Democrats going to save democracy?" I think of someone like Bill Foster who couldn't be bothered to stop genocide. How the hell is he going to save democracy?
Right.
This is the problem that we're facing. Marie, some questions coming in that I wanted to throw your way. How do you feel about ranked choice voting?
I'm more fascinated all the time. I've done a lot of research on it. In California, they've had some success with it, right? And there's other parts of the country that do it. And there are a lot of states that have tried it at the local level and had success, that it does appear to be a fairer model, right? So I'm open to being completely sold on it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I need to do a little bit more research and understand it. But here's why I'm so open to it is that um, districts are very complex, right?
Yeah.
And they can change in just like a 4-year period. They can go from being a very young district to an older district to a wealthier district to not so wealthy, and lower income to middle income. All of those
Yeah.
things, right? And it also allows for folks that are not wealthy candidates to do better. So
Right.
there's a bunch of reasons why I'm super interested and open to this notion. Um, if I remember correctly, that in order for it to become a thing federally, we have to get it passed in each of the states first if we wanted it to be a federal model.
Yeah.
I am open to that process happening. And I know that there are state legislators here in Illinois that are interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
I'm
push here in
interested.
Illinois. There's a push
Yeah,
here in Illinois for it to
yeah,
go, and I think it's brilliant. And for those who aren't familiar with ranked choice voting, you basically allow your vote to have the maximum impact by ranking. So if me, Marie, and 3 other people are on a ballot, you would
mhm,
rank Marie one, me second, and then third, fourth, and fifth. And everybody ranks this. And then what happens is that they tally up all the votes, and then whoever got the fifth most votes gets dropped off, and their votes get distributed based on order to the other remaining 4. It's retallied, and then finally, the person who got the most votes got the most votes based on an actual majority as opposed to a plurality, right?
yeah,
So if 5 of us are in a race and Marie gets 30% and the rest of us split 70%, well, then Marie wins, which is technically fair because she got 30% more than everybody
yeah.
else. But to the 70% who didn't vote for her, it may not be fair. And so what ranked choice voting does is that it makes sure that Marie is elected by getting more than 51% of the vote, which is what you want. That's why I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah.
Marie, another question that came in from Robert Dempsey. How do you deal with 75 million low information voters who only get their news from Fox News and right-wing outlets? Do we leave them alone and focus on the 1/3 that didn't vote? What is your strategy?
Well, if it's a short-term strategy, you're gonna focus on that 1/3 that stayed home, right? You
Yeah,
you definitely want to focus on them. But that doesn't mean you can't chew gum and walk at the same time and start talking to those 75 million. One of the
right.
things that I'm seeing that I'm super excited about, this is great news. The media outlets that are already more on the left end of the spectrum, in the middle of the spectrum, if you're going to call the middle of the spectrum the middle, um,
Yeah,
they are propagating up, and then Substack is doing really well. All
yeah,
of these platforms where independent journalists and content creators is explosive right now. Podcasts are explosive. So
Yep.
those are propagating up, and that's good. So we're starting to get a little closer to where the right is in terms of the number of podcasts and YouTube programs and on, right? So we're seeing more of that happening, and it was proliferated right after he won the election. So the good news is we're catching up a little bit. The better news is just folks like Kasim and I that are trying to be explainers to what happens in politics, just because we have a specific background. So for all those reasons, I'm excited about independent media. And then if you look at like the Jim Acostas and the Joy Reids that are on Substack and doing
Yep.
their own show every day, oh
Yep.
man, that's amazing.
No, it's fantastic. I want to echo that sentiment about the independent voices that are rising up, especially on the
Yeah,
left. I'm working with about a dozen or so content creators, creating this content on everything from reproductive health to immigration justice
yeah,
to broader healthcare justice, economic justice, and it's having an impact because people are much more trusting of individual voices than they are by some corporate media. We're
yeah.
seeing the capitulation and the collapse of corporate media,
Ah,
right? Owned
mm,
by billionaires. Jeff Bezos has blocked how many articles critical of billionaires?
yeah.
Facebook and Twitter have become right-wing outlets. Wall Street Journal, New York Post are always right-wing outlets as
Yeah.
well.
Even
And so,
Threads. Yeah,
what's that?
yeah, Threads is getting bad too in terms of every time I say oligarch, they shadow ban me.
It's brutal.
It
It's
cracks me
absolutely
up.
brutal.
Yeah,
And look, and Substack's not perfect. It
yeah.
has issues,
No,
but I will say one
no,
thing
no.
about them is
Yeah,
that they don't restrict via algorithm, so you're able to get your content out, and
yeah.
then you actually get to maintain some sort of ownership
Control.
over your
Yeah,
emails and your followers. So if you ever want to
yeah,
leave, you can take your supporters with you as
yeah,
well, which is encouraging.
yeah,
Another question, Marie. This is from Lashandra Baker. She asked, "How do we get more people who actually care about people to run for office? How can we
yeah.
support them more holistically?"
Yeah. So it's about all of us. It's about this great activism community that has exploded in the last 6 or 8 weeks. It's about all of us encouraging and supporting. So what I do is I'm doing all of these indivisible meetings and activist meetings with other groups to encourage people to run because we do need at a bare minimum, and I'm going to say something very mean, so everybody get ready. We need to get rid of the olds.
I mean, look,
I, we, yikes.
let me
Yikes
just
on bike.
interject very quickly. Let me, because I want you to finish your point.
Yeah,
I would just
yeah,
interject very quickly. There's a reason why air traffic controllers are retired at 56.
yeah,
There's a reason why, right? If we can't, if we recognize that they may not have the best judgment after 56 to handle air traffic of a couple thousand people, maybe
yeah.
even 100,000 people, why are we going, 92-year-old Chuck Grassley or 89-year-old Dianne Feinstein controlling the lives of 330 million people? Now,
So
I'm not
wrong.
saying 56 is the right age for Congress.
Yeah,
Maybe we up to 65, maybe
yeah.
even 70. I don't know. But the
And it
fact that we
and it
have people
depends on the
dying in
person.
Congress every year in
I'll
their
tell you.
office,
I'll tell you a funny thing, Custom. I actually agree with Nikki Haley on one thing.
what's
If you
that?
can imagine that,
No, I can't
is
imagine that.
that
I want to hear this.
she was supporting cognitive tests when you're in your 70s. If you're in your 70s, and it's fine. Like, look, we shouldn't be ashamed to be lucky enough to get to our 70s and 80s and 90s. But let's go ahead and have a cognitive test. I don't think that's unfair.
Yeah,
If you're going to be, serving in public office. This is a big, sophisticated, and very complicated country. The Dianne Feinstein thing was a debacle in every
yeah.
way. Her family didn't serve her well. Her colleagues didn't serve her well, and her staff didn't serve her well by letting her deteriorate the way she did. And then her constituents weren't covered at all. The one thing I keep hearing, and I want to make this point, is Marie, we feel unprotected because our members of Congress are not protecting us. And
Yeah.
so, as I always say, everybody's heard me say this 100 times, is when nobody's coming to save us, we have to save us because we are unprotected right now.
And you're exactly right. And to your point that you made earlier, throughout history, it's always been people that created the grassroots movement that politicians then followed.
Yeah.
on every single issue out there. There's not a single social justice issue where politicians said, I'm going to be the leader and be courageous and bold
Right.
and push this through. There was a groundswell of movement from the people, and that pushed it through. And by the way, this idea about there being age limits is not unique. There are several functioning democracies around the world that have an age limit for judges, have an age limit for politicians, and it's considered normal because people recognize that, hey, if you don't have the ability to drive a car, you probably shouldn't be driving this country as well. And that
Yeah.
shouldn't be a controversial statement to make. We have the oldest Congress in the history of
Oh,
the United States right now. And I
yeah.
feel like I can't turn on the news without hearing about Mitch McConnell falling down the stairs um, again, or somebody dying while in office. Who was a member of Congress who attended the State of the Union and then died
Yeah,
the next day,
Sylvester from Texas. Yeah,
right?
Congressman Sylvester. That
I,
was very sad, and he's a relatively young man too. Like, so that was just so
he was
sad.
he was 70. Yeah, he was
Was he
70.
70? Oh, I thought he
Yeah,
was 60. Okay.
yeah. No, he was
Um,
70, and
yeah,
and that's the
that's so
point
sad. Yeah,
that
it's a stressful place.
it's not ageism, right? Because
Yeah,
ageism is because you're a certain age, you're denied basic civil rights, right? Or
yeah,
you're denied
right.
the right to have an income. We're just saying that when you're in a position of controlling the livelihoods of tens of millions of people,
Yeah,
it's completely fair to say that you should be under a certain age so that not only are you cognitively there, but the decisions you make should impact you as well. I mean, if you're Chuck
yeah.
Grassley, 92 years old, the decisions he's making now are going to have an impact over the next 50, 60 years.
For Grains, I listened to one of his committee meetings, and oh my dear Lord,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And
Um,
then the number, and I will just tell you in Congress, and I'll tell you a real secret here is that
yeah.
um, I would say more than 15 times I was in meetings where older members of Congress fell asleep in a meeting, and I'm not exaggerating.
I believe it. I believe it. Somebody just had a comment that I actually wanted to say the week it happened, but I knew I would get my head bitten off. So I'm like, just let me leave it alone for now. Somebody just said RBG's ego made the Supreme Court even more jacked up. And look, she was a brilliant jurist, and she had some brilliant contributions
Mhm.
to protecting civil rights in this country. I also think there needs to be a reckoning to say, hey, you're 80 some years old. It might be a good idea to retire. And John Paul Stevens did that, right? And
Yeah,
Sandra Day O'Connor did that. So it wouldn't be unprecedented. But maybe we would have still had a conservative majority, but instead of being a 6-3 supermajority, it could have been a 5-4.
yeah.
And hindsight is 2020. But my point is, this kind of stuff doesn't have to be hindsight.
Well,
Um,
better than that. We should have term limits on judges, particularly the Supreme Court, but all
yeah,
judges. And
yeah,
then we also should have term limits for Congress. And I know there's a lot of Democrats that would scream at me about that. But until we get money out of politics, because that's what drives it. People stay in politics because they continue to get funded by corporate PACs, right?
yes, right,
That's at the heart. Money is at the heart of everything. I'm just here to tell you, newsflash, folks.
yep,
It's so until we get money out of politics, having term limits is the next best thing. So
yep.
I think it's up and down the line. Let's be fair, whether you're a senator or a member of Congress or a Supreme Court jurist, let's have term limits.
And again, absolutely to completely co-sign everything you said, and to build to that, I think one of my frustrations is the push in 2020 was let's just get Donald Trump out of office. Once we
Yeah.
get him out of office, we can fix the democracy, we can save the soul of America, as Joe Biden said. Um, Americans rallied. We gave Biden the House, the White House, and the Senate. Slim majorities, but the key word is majorities. No significantly greater than the majority that Trump has right now. I
Yeah.
think the frustration that folks have is the majorities that Trump has right now are no larger than the majorities we had back in 2021. Why is Trump able to destroy the entire government, but we
Well,
couldn't
his
pass some of the fundamental promises that Biden
yeah.
said? Things like expanding the Supreme Court, things like canceling all student loan debt, things like the Build Back Better initiative, the child tax credit, and more meaningful access to healthcare. These are all things that I think when you look at the post 24 election polling, 19 million people, according to one poll, who voted in 2020 stayed home in 2024
Yeah.
because they said that the economic promises that were promised simply weren't delivered. And we know Trump is worse, but we're tired of, we gave you a trifecta and we're still in the same boat. So
Yeah.
how is getting involved again? What are your thoughts on that? Because I empathize. This is far worse. I agree, but I also empathize with that frustration.
Yeah, no, of course they were, and I have huge sympathy and empathy for those folks that stayed home out of frustration. Look, I get it, and you know what? You do get exhausted. So I'm thrilled to see people, kind of are coming back and rested for a while and are back. And there's a lot of new activists as well, so that's all
Yeah,
good news, right? Um, but let me just assure everybody on this call that this is a doable thing.
yeah,
So
I agree.
historically, it only takes about 3.5% of any given quasi democracy or democracy republic, we're a blend of a democracy and republic, to bring things around again. When the Labour Party was all but dead in the UK, it took them about 9 years in the Thatcher years to really rebuild. And you know what they started with? Asking people what they wanted and why they wanted it, and
Right,
working with people and partnering, not shoving stuff down their throat. So
right.
those people that stayed home, I get it, but you do need to give all of this a chance. Work with the activists, get your message out there, and make sure that you tell your story to everyone.
Yeah, very, very well said. God, you keep nailing it, Marie. We aren't hopeless. I want to be
Yeah,
clear.
it's very
Neither one of
doable.
us
This is
think
doable. I
it
assure you.
absolutely is.
Yeah,
Neither one of us think we're hopeless or that this country's hopeless. And James Baldwin talks about this as well. That I've been angry and enraged at this country, but I've never despaired. I can't tell my children. I can't tell the children that there's no hope. There absolutely is hope. There absolutely is. It's going to require us to be active and organized. And 3.5%. Put that into population terms. What is that? About 10 million people?
yeah, 11 million.
11
Yeah.
million? Doing what? What should these 11 million people be doing?
What we are all doing, what 3 million are doing right now. So 3 million across the country, because we've had protests in all 50 states. There's about 3 to 4 million that have been active between the Tesla protests, which I love.
Yeah.
I love those. Those are my personal favorite. It takes that 3 million, probably, threefold, right? And we're
Yep.
going to be in a good spot. Remember, that's how South Korea solved their problem with an authoritarian that was about to put
Right.
martial law in place. They all sat at the Capitol, right? We can do that too. So I think that we're getting more organized and we're heading towards that critical mass of 11 million. And when we get there, there's just no denying it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you another good sign this week: the fact that Trump decided to open a used car lot on the
Oh
front lawn
God.
of the White House and sell his buddy's hardware. I think that's a big sign that that look, that dude is hurting now. His stock price is in half of where it was even 3 months ago. So Tesla is on the wane, Twitter's on the wane. They're feeling it. Target lost $16 billion last month. These boycotts are
They're
so
working.
working. But you know who are the heroes here, and we have to thank them every day? Are not just those 3 million activists that are already out there, the state AGs, the 16 state AGs that have been so successful in about two-thirds of the time getting
Yep.
these awful actions reversed,
Yep.
because they were ready. They
Yep.
prepared. They
Yep.
read that 900-page document from Psychopaths, right?
Yep. Absolutely
So
right.
they were ready, and the Democratic Party isn't ready. The activists were ready. We
Yep.
were ready.
Yep. And and that I think that's where the frustration is, that where the hell was the party that caught flat-footed, like
Yeah.
this just came out of nowhere. Um, we were down to our last couple of minutes before
Yeah.
we got to go, and I got to go break fast pretty soon as well. But you got a book coming out,
I do.
and for those in the Chicagoland area, you've got a book launch party happening as well. Tell us about it and where we can find it.
Sure. So my book is A Life Made from Scratch. It's a book about my rise to Congress. So all of the activism that I've done in communities and kind of a bunch of stories and anecdotes around that. Also gives you some kind of, it's not just tips, but kind of a roadmap how to do organizing, community building, with some pretty poignant stories from business, community, and politics.
Hmm.
And then it also is an inside view of Congress. What is it really like, and what really happens, and why did things happen versus didn't happen, right? So I share about a lot about that. So it's stories and some, practical advice. But the stories are everything from pretty funny and pretty sharp
Yep.
over to some super sad things. But the reason I wrote this book was because I want everybody to run. I want everybody to run for office, but I want them to be prepared.
Yeah.
So you can come to my book launch on March 18th at the beautiful Lombard, Illinois store of Barbara's Bookstore, 7 o'clock on March 18th. That's next Tuesday. And you can get the book at barnesandnoble.com. You can get it at bookshop.org. And then if you're not, I am actually boycotting fully Amazon, but it is available on Amazon. But go to Barnes and Noble or bookshop.org and get A Life Made from Scratch. And I would be so happy if you would.
Yeah, I've read it. I was fortunate to get an advanced copy. I loved it and I enjoyed it immensely. And I'm going to be there on the 18th as well. So hopefully we'll get to see a lot of you. Maria, I wanted to close out, but somebody asked a question that I think I really want to answer, and I want to hear from you first on this one because
Sure.
it's a tough question, and I think it's a very fair question. Shelley Cartland asks, "Who do you see leading us? It seems like Bernie's doing everything you're talking about, but he's also over 80." And I think Shelley's question is really appropriate. Every
Yep.
movement, every organization needs a leader. Unfortunately, Democratic leadership is asleep at the wheel. Somebody said that Hakeem Jeffries' tweet that "Remember, God is in control" is literally him saying, "Jesus, take the wheel," which is not the strategy I wanted out of our
And
Democratic
not
leader. So who's
so
our leader?
yeah,
How do we? Yeah.
so I think what Shelley is reiterating, what a lot of my subscribers said, is we feel unprotected. Like, who's going
Yeah.
to lead this thing? So
Yeah.
let me assure you that, again, throughout history, the activists lead the movement, the opposition movement, and we are an opposition party. We are not a resistance party. We are a full on, all things, all out there, put all the cards on the table opposition party. Inside the party, here's what I think is going to emerge. Chris Murphy and Bernie are going to be a team and emerge in the Senate. In the House, Jamie Raskin, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Ro Khanna, and several others are going to get real fed up. They already are, and just go rogue. And that's my prediction. So we do have leaders, but go ahead and encourage them too. Like reach
Yeah.
out to them on social media and say, "Hey guys, we need a leader. Just break out, dude."
That's exactly right. Let them hear you. They are human
Yeah.
beings. They're not robots. They listen and they
Yep.
hear. And the people who are willing to hear are the ones, or the people that are willing to listen are the ones that we want to further get behind and support. And don't just, give them positive feedback. Tell them when you think they messed up as well, because the whole
Yeah.
point is that they listen. Marie, this was great. I can't wait to see you on the 18th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
at Barbara's Bookstore. And I hope everybody listening here also subscribes to Marie's Substack because it's amazing. And I want to reiterate on her book. If you really want a raw, unfiltered picture of what's going on in Congress, this is where you're going to find it. If you want to know what's happening inside that black box, this is where you're going to find it. So definitely pick up a copy. I've got my own copy, but I'm going to order another one because I really want to support this initiative and I want her to get all the flowers in the world. Marie, thanks for doing this. Let's do this again soon.
Thank you. Okay, happy iftar to you and your family.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.